Hey, good evening. It's Allison Schaefer, parenting expert and family counselor, and we're here with our Facebook Live tonight. This has been one in a series of Facebook Lives that I've conducted over this past year as part of my hashtag Family Talk series, which is a companion piece to a whole bunch of resources on my YouTube channel that is aimed at helping resource parents, support, educate, and resource parents with how to prevent underage drinking, or in fact, how to handle situations when we discover that our kids have been drinking. And so I just want to go over some of those goals of the program for us, so that we're really trying to get parents enthused about owning the power that they actually have to make a difference in their kids' choices to refuse alcohol. That in fact, a lot of parents don't realize that they are the number one factor in whether kids make the decision to drink or not. So I want to give you that power and give you the confidence that you know how to handle these situations, not only proactively, that you know how to talk to your kids about your family values, that you know how to set clear rules and limits around your child's decisions around underage drinking, to talk to them about the risk factors involved in underage drinking. And so that when you do have those moments when your kids come home and you discover they're either drunk or alcohol has gone missing, that you've got a clear strategy so that you've got that confidence to be able to expedite in the moment. And tonight, not only we're going over those items, but we have a very special focus to our topic, which is about having the fortitude to follow through. And the idea behind that is that we want to shift away from our fearful, punitive tactics and move to something that's more positive, discipline-based. And that's what we've got our time to talk about tonight. Now, as if you participated in one of these before, you'll know that I talk at the beginning about our program and the information, but the second half of our time together is actually set up to be an open Q&A so that we can enter into discussions. And also, because we're so interested in knowing whether or not we are being helpful to you, as a favor to me and to the program, we'd like to take just 3 minutes of your time to complete a questionnaire after you've watched the information. And honestly, it really does only take 3 minutes. And anyone who, or the first, 100 people that actually jump on and get that survey completed will get a $5 Tim Hortons card as a thank you. And anybody who posts a question, if you share this on your timeline, share this with a friend, engage with us in our conversation tonight, your name will be entered into a draw, and one person will be the lucky winner of a $250 Visa gift card, which at this time of year, I'm sure all of us could appreciate. So even though the question portion is at the end, I'm here with Catherine at H2O Digital Offices that host me here and help me out with my social media. And Catherine's going to be helping read through the questions. So please don't wait till the end. Start posting your questions now. And maybe I can pose this very first question to you, which is, when you think of yourself as a parent in your own parenting style, how do you rate yourself? Do you tend to be somebody who's a little bit more lenient, a little bit more likely to get walked over by your kids? Or are you someone who your default parenting is more to be strict, a little bit on the firmer side of things? And maybe you're one of those people that waffle depending on the moment. I'm also interested in knowing how old are your kids and whether or not you've actually already had to face some alcohol-related conversations or incidences with your kids. So help me out by posting some of those so we can see who's on our call and what's interesting for you folks tonight. But I want to get going here. Tonight, our topic then is about this idea of the fortitude to follow through, that I really want to give you that confidence to be able to implement a parenting strategy with your kids and underage drinking. And I think that most of us are pretty caught off guard. I think that our expectation is that our little angels are not going to drink, or it's not going to happen until high school. And so we end up finding ourselves in a situation where we feel unprepared because it's happened too early. We haven't been proactive. We haven't thought about how we're going to handle the situation. And let's face it, as parents, I can't think of anything that is more fearful than thinking that our kids might be in danger and that they might be underage drinking. And it's because of the intensity of our fear. It's because of our great worry that we're losing control that a lot of us parents want to regain control. And so we tend to want to come down like a bag of hammers on our kids, right? Especially over those really important and scary and potentially life-threatening situations. So I understand And I can see that for many of us, we maybe were raised with punitive tactics, and we kind of think like, no way, my kid is not getting away with this. This crosses a line. This isn't a small infraction like you don't like the color of your lipstick or your skirt's too short or whatever our other parenting complaints might be. We might feel like this is the really big one, and that intensity comes down with us being super, super punitive. And many of us, if that was our experience, that we were punished as kids, we often make the default thinking that, well, I was punished as a kid and I turned out okay. My parents were way harsher on me than I am on my kids, and I behaved. I was afraid of my parents and I turned out okay. And I do understand how parents can have that thinking. I'm empathetic to how we come to that position. But I have to go back to best practices and what the research shows. And what the research shows is that when we punish kids as a discipline tactic, the research shows that kids actually go into a position of fear. And because we're trying to educate them, being frightened is actually the worst frame of mind to learn. So it hurts with the education piece. When a child is looking to their primary love attachment as someone who cares and nurtures for them, and then that primary caregiver hurts them, because punishment is meant to create some kind of pain and suffering, then we're starting to shred the bond between parent and child. And we really need a healthy relationship to best influence our kids' decisions later. So we hurt the relationship, the child's afraid, and they don't learn. And in fact, it actually hurts their long-term self-esteem and self-confidence. So we have worse outcomes in the long term when we use punitive tactics. So I want to address, if we're not going to use punitive tactics, then if that's not the way to go, then we have to be able to substitute something else. And that something else does not mean that your kids get to do whatever they want. That so many people, in giving up punishment and their fear of having a more dictatorial, authoritative, firm kind of stance, actually ends up having kids feeling like they have a bit of a free-for-all. And I want to make sure that people distinguish that what I'm talking about is positive discipline, that we're going to substitute the use of consequences and problem solving and use the strength of the relationship as the tools to prevent and guide our children to prevent underage drinking. So let's look at how that would look like. So again, starting proactively, if the word disciple is about to teach and to educate, it's never too early to start having conversations with your kids about what your family values are and what your family rules are about underage drinking. You can start this whenever something comes up. It doesn't matter if your child is 5 or 6 or 7, way before they're even considering or interested in the concept of alcohol. There might just be something on the news. It might be that something happens at a party where you can say, that was irresponsible drinking, or see, that was dangerous, that somebody was in a car accident, that was risky behavior related to drinking, and that's dangerous and against the law. So just planting these little seeds is a way of starting the conversation about underage drinking. And for your kids then, what I would want them to know is that when you drink alcohol and you're a minor, and the reason why it's an age related behavior, it's not the only thing that the law will have a restraint around by age. You can speak to your kids about the fact that other laws such as voting, having access to a trust fund, alcohol is just one of many laws that are set based on your age. And it's because there's a developmental piece there, that even though they may feel smart and wise, they need to understand that underneath, the brain is actually in a very vulnerable and volatile time of rewiring during adolescence, in that time of life. And what that means is, by its very nature of this rewiring, kids are both more likely to want to take risks, but they're also at a time when they're not good decision makers. The ability of the brain to make good decisions is compromised at this time of life. And so for those reasons, we make this an age-related piece. And so I think if you couch it to your children this way, that there's a biological piece behind this, there's a law behind this, and that your family values are such that you want your kids to be healthy and you want to be a law-abiding family, and that we don't pick and choose which laws we think are the right ones or the wrong ones. We just accept the fact that our family abides by the law, and there's an expectation that they will abide by the laws too. And it's okay if they like or don't like the laws, but we're going to be law abiding anyways. So I think we can talk about these types of things in advance of a situation happening, before you think that your kids are ever going to be needing this information, because you're going to be calmer then. It's going to be more of a discussion. It's going to feel less threatening the more proactively that you talk about it. And you can ask them questions. You can ask them, is alcohol showing up in parties? Do you know any older siblings? Has it shown up at the schoolyard? And so that they start to realize that you are somebody who is conversant and calm about it. You're sort of disclosing to them that you're a safe person to have these conversations. And you're actually now building up the relationship and educating them, rather than being the lecturing person who's easy to shut down the conversation with kids. So I think you want to start by having those conversations early. So the other piece that really makes the movement away from punishment and moving on to consequences and education and positive discipline methods is that punishment is an interesting little animal, in that some parents will say that it's effective, and it does tend to be kids that are punished, that want to be obedient, tend to do that so long as there's an authority figure around, right? The problem is, and just think of a teacher in a classroom that uses punitive measures, and then she goes down the hallway to go hand in the attendance form, and the class goes crazy because the authority figure is not there watching them anymore, not threatening them with punishments anymore. And so you might use punishment to keep your kids in line at home, but the truth is, a lot of these teen years are spent not under our supervision. That we need our kids to make good decisions for themselves when they're out in the world, when they're out at the bush party, when they're out at the house party, because they're going to have exposure to alcohol, and without us looking over their shoulders and without our supervision, in the moment they need to be making those good choices independently. And punitive tactics are not going to accomplish that. So we need to start having these proactive conversations about why we have those family rules, and allow that dialogue to start to unfold. I think the other thing too is that we also need to model a healthy relationship ourselves with alcohol, modeling good responsible behavior that way. And the other piece too is that as we're building up the relationship, what's ending up happening is that the child starts to believe that you're somebody who has their back, that sees their perspective, that they trust, and they kind of think, well, they're a good person. They seem to be giving me good advice. They wouldn't just be making something up to ruin my fun. There must be something valid about this. And so when we have that trust with our kids, and we have that strong, healthy relationship, and we turn around and say, and we trust you to say no when alcohol is being served, they're much more likely to accept our influence. Whereas if our relationship has been shredded because of punitive tactics, often what will end up happening is our kids will actually use our values as a way to retaliate, revenge, and seek revenge upon us, sort of punish us for our punishment that we might have dished out in some other way. So I don't want to go down that path at all. I want to keep this with a positive, healthy relationship with high expectations. And it's very interesting that when we ask kids, why did you say no to alcohol? And what the kids will say is, I didn't want to disappoint my parents. And so that's only going to happen as a response if they actually don't want to disappoint you, which means they have to really care about the relationship themselves. So it needs to be a healthy relationship. So let's then walk through. You've had the conversation now. You've told your kids about the risks. You've told them about the law. You've talked about your family values. You've had this discussion in advance. And then, boom, sure enough, you discover that your child has actually gotten themselves into a situation. They walk in the door. I don't like to ask the question, have you been drinking? Because that will just invite a lie. And I think you can say, hey, I see that your words are mumbled and you're stumbling around. You're intoxicated. So I would just name it. Don't set them up to lie. And at that point, I know that you're probably panicking, but at that point, your role is not to start worrying about consequencing and reactions. At that moment in time, when you've discovered your child has been drinking, you really need to be a caregiver. You need to think of yourself as a healthcare professional. You need to find out how much they've had to drink, because we need to find out whether or not they need medical attention, whether they need to get their stomach pumps, whether there's a risk of alcohol poisoning. So we need to check that out, and then we need to get them into bed, hydrated, and let them know we'll talk about this tomorrow, and give them your reassurance. I love you. This is a conversation for when we're sober. There's no sense talking about things when we're intoxicated. And you are not being permissive by being loving and caring, because you're going to have this conversation later. Get them tucked into bed. And if they have called you for a ride, you reiterate, I'm so proud of you. That took a lot of courage. You did the right thing. You always call for a ride, no questions asked. And so then now we can have the conversation the next day. And I'm sure they're going to be very upset with themselves, because they know what the family rules are. They know they've broken the rules. They know they've been caught with the rules. So if they stay in bed and they don't wake up and they don't make their way downstairs, no, the longer until they make face with you, they're actually experiencing their own psychic discomfort. And that's part of the learning curve. That in and of itself is one of the consequences. So now we sit down in a time of calm when people are sober, and what we're trying to do is to go back through the evening and to say to them, you know, let's re-talk about what the expectations are for the family. Something clearly went off the rails here. We need to talk about how we can make a plan for moving forward so things don't go off the rails again. And we need to come up with a consequence. So consequences are effective if you co-create them with your kids. A lot of parents feel the pressure, like, I don't know, what's the consequence for that? What's the consequence for that? If you co-create it together, your child is going to be less likely to be upset about it, because they've actually had a say in creating it. And it makes them have to be a bit of a problem solver themselves. Like, yeah, like what would be the appropriate consequence for that? I want to get them thinking. I don't want them just passively receiving. I want them really to use that noodle, start working that brain to think about what would be appropriate. And so one of the things about consequences is that it needs to be tied to what happened. Too often, you know, parents will say, you know what, you've disappointed me, you've acted badly, I'm taking away your cell phone, or I'm taking away your computer. This happens all the time. That's actually not a consequence. I mean, that really makes it fall into the realm of punishment, because consequences need to be related. Consequences tie freedoms to responsibilities. So if we think about that as like, if you'd like to have the freedom to ride a bike, you need to show me that you're responsible enough to wear a helmet. If you don't wear your helmet, then you lose your bike privileges. That makes sense to a kid. That does not feel mean. That does not feel like you're going outside the bounds. So let's think of some consequences for kids. If they have thrown up in your car, what's the consequence? They need to clean it. They need to clean it or pay for detailing. If they have lied to a neighbor and said that they weren't drinking at their home and they were drinking in their basement, they're going to have to rebuild that trust and offer an apology. If they have embarrassed themselves, they're going to have to face the embarrassment of their friends if they acted goofy. And so that parents might want to add more to that consequence, but sometimes the consequences have already happened. If they have thrown up in public, they might be terribly embarrassed about that. So nothing more needs to be added to that. The hangover is a consequence for drinking. And so this feeling that we have to add more is actually not really there. We just need to make sure that the consequence is tied and that they experience those consequences. So again, I might want to review with them something like, help me be assured that you know what some of the risks are. And so maybe they need to go online and report back to you on what are the indicators of alcohol poisoning. Maybe they need to find out, what is the alcohol content of a hard liquor drink versus beer, because kids, they don't know this stuff. There might be some more education piece that needs to be happening there, and that's okay for them to go research that and come back and report to you so that they can confirm with you that they really do have the understanding. And then again, going back to, we make the consequence together. The child, because it's made together, is going to be less upset, which means you're going to be able to feel much stronger in your position to be able to follow through with implementing that consequence. And then we can speak to them about what was it that became problematic for you that we could work on together in a collaborative way so that you can get out of this sticky situation again. Because I'm telling you, a lot of teenagers actually are not, they don't think well in the moment. And so often they need to have a plan. So a plan that I've seen other families work is some families have like a password that they can text on their phone, which basically says, come pick me up, no questions asked. And that could be because alcohol just shows up and they're uncomfortable and they just need a way to leave. They go, oh, you know what? My mom just called me. Actually, there's a family emergency. I have to go. Great. If that works and that gets them out of that sticky situation, fantastic. I've had other parents that have suggested that, well, you know, I want to have social status and everybody's drinking. I'm afraid if I don't drink, I'm going to lose my social status. Would you feel more comfortable having a soda water with a lime in it if that's going to make you feel like you got this prop in your hand? Nobody needs to know what you're really drinking. If that makes it feel more, well, like what everyone else is doing, that's fine. It's still a way, you're still evading having alcohol. As a matter of fact, a lot of people have things in sippy cups now. So working through these different situations, like a lot of kids actually like being the designated driver because now you're the friend who's actually going to make sure everybody gets home safely. And so your kid's not drinking, they're being a caregiver. You know, that might be actually put them in all kinds of high regard with their friends. So I would be empathetic to that they're in this challenge, but it doesn't mean that these challenges can't be solved. And so work with them so that they've got the what I will do differently on top of experiencing these consequences so that you're moving in a positive direction. And always having that faith that, you know what, we make mistakes. I love you. Mistakes were made. We've cleaned up the mistakes. And now I still have this expectation and faith and trust that you'll say no the next time. Because if kids feel like you're not going to trust them, if kids feel like they can't try again, they go, look, they already think I'm going to be bad. I might as well do it. Right? So I always want to give them that fresh start, that clean slate. But again, you might have to skip one. So if you say, well, if you'd like to stay home while mom and dad go away for the weekend and have the house, then you need to show me that you can be responsible enough to not have friends over drinking in the house. If that becomes a problem, then we'll lose the freedom to be able to let you stay home next time. But then but the time after that, let's try again. There always has to be that. And so let's try again piece to all of this. So making sure I cover all my notes here. We've got a lot of stuff to cover today. So we've got our tying our freedoms and our responsibilities together, co-creating the solution, the consequences together, remembering that there's consequences that have already naturally happened that your child already is suffering with, and then that cleaning up, trying it again, that we trust you. So those are kind of my key elements tonight. So I want to turn the floor over to you to see, how are you feeling about things? Do you feel like you've got a strategy now so that you can talk to your kids about your family rules? Are you able to talk comfortably about your family values and about abiding by the law, the confidence in how to deal with them when they get home? Are you starting to feel more robust about the idea that you could abandon punishment and still not be walked on, that you can actually be strong in influencing your child's underage drinking by using the power of the relationship, by using the power of collaborative consequencing, and allowing them to actually experience that? So that's my goal. That's where I want you to be. And I want you to be able to spread this to your friends, because I think when all of us do this together, and the majority of kids don't drink anymore. We still want to lower that rate and get it. No amount of underage drinking is okay. But the more parents we get on board that are empowered with these tools, the more we're going to see a societal shift. And the more we have a societal shift, the less our kids are going to be in these pressure-filled situations. So it's to everyone's best interest to enthuse and pass on this information to our friends. So on that thought, let me turn it over to questions and see how else I can be helpful tonight.
Okay. I feel like we are constantly applying natural consequences that feel like punishments. Can you speak about the distinction and how we can reframe it so that the boundaries don't feel like we're opposing authoritarian consequences?
Right. So there's a couple qualities to consequences, and so we want them to be reasonable. So again, we're unreasonable. For example, unreasonable would be if you caught your child drinking and then you said, that's it, you're never going to another party for the rest of your life. I mean, you can't, it's like that doesn't fit the size of the crime. So it needs to be reasonable. And it needs to be, again, like I said, related. So if you've got to tie that educational piece there. So drinking has nothing to do with access to a phone. Drinking has nothing to do with whether or not you go on a family trip to Florida. Drinking has nothing to do with whether or not you can go to a movie on Friday. It's got to stay related to the behavior that the child has done. So reasonable, related, and then the revealed in advance is, and this is why we're co-creating them together. Kids need to know, if I choose this, this happens. If I choose that, that happens. So they need to have an idea. What ends up happening to kids is they behave in a certain way and we say, that's it. And we come up with some weird thing that and they're like, whoa, I had no idea that was going to happen if I made that choice in my behavior. So think about how much that would feel punitive to you. If I said to you, hey, you know what? You can lease this new Jaguar and it only costs you $50 a month. And you're like, cool, I want a Jaguar for $50 a month. And you sign up and they go, oh, but I didn't tell you that, at the end, there's a $100,000 buyout or whatever. It's like, oh, just a second here. I would have made a different decision if I had the rest of that information. You got to give your kids all the information up front so that they can make those decisions. And I think, again, that's why when they know that one of the decisions is we expect you to behave well, that kids will say, I don't want to let my parents down. I care enough about them. I don't want to let them down. So that is already in their mind. Yeah. Hope that's helpful.
How do you address the issue kids have when they find out that you, the parent, may have drank underage?
Mistakes were made. I mean, I would not be walking around boasting about, it's all in how you tell it. If you're telling the stories about your underage drinking or your kids, I don't know, maybe they see a picture about it. I think then it's how you process what happened to you then and why you'd say, you know what, and I made some mistakes too, or I wasn't thinking, or, I don't want you to make it sound like that you're a hypocrite, but it's okay to say, you know what, and then I learned and I would hope better for you. I think that's really fair. But I don't want as parents boasting so that they glamorize it and send a condoning type message to their kids. But it's okay to say, yep, you know what? I wasn't thinking, I made some mistakes. I have regrets. I hope better for you. I think that's enough said.
Any tips for equality solution in terms of dealing with consequences, girls versus boys?
Oh, that's interesting. Should there be a gender difference around those consequences? I think that right now gender is like the hot topic and everybody is looking at things through the lens of gender. But I can't, as you're asking me that, I'm thinking would I give a different consequence to an underage female versus an underage male for the same behavior? No. I wouldn't say, oh, girls should get a lighter sentence or whatever. I wouldn't say that. I would say you're probably going to have different concerns. So in one of my earlier Facebook Lives, and again, please go back and get all the resources if this is topical to you. But we did talk about the idea that there's gender pressures around why, for understanding youth culture for girls is let's drink because then it's going to be a social lubricant and we can be more flirtatious. And there's mixed messages about girls and sending inappropriate signals or getting encouraged to get kind of hooked up. That's problematic. Guys, on the other hand, have a problem whereby a lot of their drinking is binge drinking to impress, and it's kind of like male vibrato. So you're probably not going to get a lot of situations where girls are doing maybe some of that more high risk, crazy challenges per se. That's going to probably be more of a guy thing. In which case, I think the conversations need to be around, hey, I know a little bit about youth culture. I know a little bit about these challenges. Are people doing that in your group? Do you understand the dangers behind consuming that amount in that short amount of time? The likelihood of accidents because of poor judgment that happen with some of these challenges that go wrong. And again, there's an opportunity to say, hey, why don't you go research and find me the last 3 challenges and see if there's any news articles on things gone bad. Just let them do some of their own primary research and talk to you about it.
Okay, how should we address the use of allowance that we know has been used to purchase alcohol? What will be the consequence?
So the way I handle allowance is that allowance is budgeted, just like if you have a household budget or if you run a company and you have a budget and you have line items. And so you have a line item, for heat, hydro, phone, whatever it might be. And kids' allowance might be clothing allowance, movie, lunch money. And so what I would say is that if they're not using the money for the allocated line items, you'll lose the line item, if that makes any sense. So it doesn't look like your money is going towards lunch money, so I'm docking your allowance by the $20 for lunch money. So eventually they're going to get down to just the bare bones. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We tried to take away our daughter's cell phone allowance and other privileges, but nothing seems to work. She seems immune to consequences. What should we do?
Yeah, because I think those consequences, if they weren't related to misuse of those items, I think that's very much the Phil Donahue, find what they love and take it away. That was like his big thing, because the privilege is in the privilege of using it. So if she's on social media and she's bullying, then I say you can confiscate her phone, but you can't say you're talking rudely to me or you're not doing your chores, so I'm taking away your phone. They're not related. So the idea of not caring is, in a sense, it's like this one-upmanship and a power struggle where it's like she's saying, you can't make me. We're like, yes, we can. We're taking away your phone, and ha ha ha, I don't even care. And really the not caring is not letting you win at constraining her by taking these things away. So I don't think that the methodology for changing the behavior is helping. So I want to find out, what is she trying to accomplish? Where is the disconnect happening that she doesn't want to be cooperative with you? And so in my classes, I talk about the idea that cooperation is a byproduct, and the byproduct is feeling like you're in a respectful relationship and that you belong, that you feel close and connected. And what happens when we become punitive in our discipline, we end up not in respectful relationships. It's disrespectful to punish kids, and we move apart because we're not feeling close and connected to somebody who's punishing us. So the better you improve the health of the relationship and the more respectful you make your discipline, the more you're going to stimulate cooperation in her. So it's not so much techniquey as it is just really shifting up the whole way that the family's operating. And that may mean a parenting class, that might mean going in for some family counseling sessions. Then things change quickly when you reach out for some good help.
Should we be laying out the consequences for our kids early on when they're younger, or should we be waiting till these situations happen?
It's a good question. I think that you can talk about your expectations. You can talk about your family values. I wouldn't necessarily, want to lay out, if I catch you drinking, because sometimes you're almost tipping your cards and saying like, I expect you to drink because I've already thought about the consequences. So you might want to wait until the first kind of consequence happens. And like I said, if you co-create it, that's enough kind of reveal in advance. They already, in a sense, know what your expectation is for them. So for sure, one of the consequences of being disappointed and breaking the rules, they already are going to feel that. So I don't think you need to lay it out so specifically the first time, though.
How would you say consequences apply with school suspensions? Should school boards be applying a more positive approach to discipline?
Oh, I bring me the school boards. I'd love to help rejuvenate and rehaul the school system. We're seeing a lot now of research that's evidence-based, which is what schools love, around how positive discipline in the classroom looks, positive discipline schools. And we can show you with evidence that's absolutely the way to go. We also see this now with bullying. When we had bullying and people got expelled, bullying goes up. When we have restorative justice and we actually make people come together, heal, make amends, understand the pain that bullying causes, stimulate empathy, that's when things move forward. And that's a positive discipline framework as well. So we use it in the case of behavior changing around bullying and aggression. We can use exactly those same models to bring about behavior change for kids in their decision to not underage drink. And hopefully you're finding this educative and supportive and positive, and you're learning new ways to approach your kids in underage drinking, which is probably more effective in changing your behavior than I said, I am going to charge every parent $100 if they catch their kid drinking. going to be punitive with you. I'm going to be educative and positive and empower you and give you tools and tactics. That's what's going to bring about behavior change. It's exactly the same with kids.
Okay, what would you say is a consequence for a child who's being rude or disrespectful?
So again, I find that anytime we're thinking about a consequence, we always have to kind of also start and go back and say, what's the child trying to accomplish? Like, we have to understand a behavior before we correct the behavior. And so again, in the case of rudeness, mostly kids are rude because they don't feel that there is respect happening in the parent-child relationship. So in a sense, it's sort of like you don't recognize, I say you, parents in general don't recognize when they're being rude and disrespectful to their children, because in our minds, we just call it parenting. But we're rude to kids all the time. We talk down to kids all the time. We punish them, which is rude discipline. And so in a sense, what they're saying is, I'll treat you as you treat me. And so if we want to change that up, the change has to start with us, where we say, hey, you know what? We need to treat each other better. I'm going to do a better job at not being disrespectful to you. And I hope that inspires you to be less disrespectful to me. And you can also, just in the moment, you can say, you know what? I will not stand in the face of disrespect. I can't make you not disrespect me, but I can say that I'm not willing to stand and tolerate it. So I'm going to move myself to another room. And so you just point it out. And a lot of times, like I said, parents don't realize when they're being rude. You might want to just have a little signal, like, you know, hey, when I feel like you're being rude to me or using tone or demeaning me in some way, I'm just going to grab from, and you can do it back, both. So your kid's going to be doing this. You're going to be going like, I just asked you to get in the car, but you're like, get in the car, we're late for school. They're like, yeah, that was kind of rude. We're rude to kids all the time. I promise you, it's not on our radar. So keep yourself in check and say you're working on it. You want them to work on it too.
Couple more?
Sure, we got time.
All right. My 13-year-old has started lying when we ask him straight out where he has gone after school. We need him to come home alone after school, but worrying that we can't trust him. What consequences can we impose when we're not there?
So again, here's another one of those downsides to punishment, that when we punish kids, they're either going to overtly rebel or they're going to get sneaky. And so they sneak and lie in order to evade your punishment. So if they don't know how to get their way through positive means, they have to get creative and sneak around your rules. And I want to win their cooperation. I don't want them to go sneaking off because they think that we're being unreasonable. So again, moving away from punitive tactics in your parenting is going to improve the likelihood of your kid not lying to you because you're no longer afraid. Increasing ways for your kids to get their way, that can be accomplished through family meetings. I've got a whole other series on my YouTube channel about how to have family meetings, and a whole chapter in Honey, I Wrecked the Kids on family meetings. But you want to kind of problem solve together. And so you might have this discussion. You know, hey, we need to figure out this coming home after school thing. If he's lying about going home, it may be that he wants to be somewhere else. And you say, you know, it sounds like you'd like to be somewhere else. How can we make plans for that? But because I need to know that you're home and safe. So what could that look like? And the more you frame it, not so much as a kid who's misbehaving, but as a problem that needs a solution, and you invite the child into the conversation, they actually are incredibly creative. He might say things like, well, how about if I FaceTime you as soon as I get home? You know, you really like to go to your friend's house and I'm okay with you doing that, but I need to know that his parents are home or something. Why don't we plan 3 days of this week for you to go there, and I'll call their parent in advance. You know, and you kind of make a plan for it so that he doesn't have to sneak to accomplish it. And just going with those basic things, like what I'm concerned about, I don't want to rein in your freedoms. I'm just really concerned about your safety. And to your point about trusting, it's really important that we continue to say there's been a mistake, but we have a clean slate. Because again, if you don't trust him, he's going to know you don't trust him, right? And so right there, the child's perception, I have a parent who doesn't trust me. I have a parent who thinks I'm going to be bad. And with the reputation of being the bad kid, might as well go do it. Like it works against you. So if you say, hey, listen, I know last week was, you know, we had some troubles, things didn't go right, but you know what, we're doing a reset. We got a new plan in place. You know, I trust you to stick to your agreements. You know, I know something about you, and you're the kind of kid who sticks to your agreements. So I really appreciate that. That'd be way harder to break that rule than one that's been kind of forced down from a high, if that makes any sense.
One more?
Sure.
Okay, my daughter went to a friend's house and was offered a beer. She said no, but came home and told me. However, I know the child and the parents who was drinking. Should I tell them?
So this is on a case-by-case situation. I don't have like a blanket statement for every situation. It really depends on how well you know the parent, how well you know the relationship with the parent and the child, and if you think your motivation should be to be helpful. If you think it will be helpful, then I think that's fine, which is very different than tattling or telling. It's like, I know some families where, because of the volatility of the family, that child could actually really be getting themselves in danger. So if you think there's domestic violence or anything like that going on at home, and I don't want to throw that kid under the bus, I would stay out of it. But if you're like, hey, you know what, we're friends. If it was my daughter, I'd want to know. So I thought you might want to know. Then I think that's fine. So I think that's on a case by case basis, but always be thinking to yourself, what's the usefulness of doing this? What's the purpose it serves? And is it going to have a positive outcome? And so long as you think that it's going to be positive, then fine. I would really take that opportunity to say to your daughter how impressed you were that she was in that situation, and independently she conducted herself in a way that you're really super happy that she made those choices independently on her own, because it's that she just faced her first little bit of pressure, and she stood up for herself, and that took an act of courage, and that was really wonderful. And anytime that we put energy into the behaviors we want to see more of, you'll get more of more of what you put energy into. So if you put too much energy into misgivings and things gone wrong, you're going to get more misgivings and things gone wrong. So kids who feel good do good. Kids who feel bad do bad. So I want kids to feel good. This is an opportunity to fill their bucket, to say, hey, there you go, you're on your right, hey, this stuff's all working. And so that's wonderful that you had that experience, so that you could give that good feedback and say how great that we have the kind of relationship that you could come to me and feel safe to talk about that. That's really, really precious, and a lot of people don't have it, and I don't ever want to lose that between you and me. It's great conversation. Yeah. So folks, just to recap, I really thank you for participating in the Family Talk series. I hope that we have given you the confidence to be able to talk to your kids about your family values, to talk about the risk of underage drinking, to talk about your own personal values, those guidelines about what are you going to do in the moment when you discover that your child's been drinking, to feel more empowered, to not feel like you have to be punitive, but in fact to increase your likelihood of the reducing of the drinking by moving to these more positive techniques, building up that relationship, helping co-create those consequences together. And I hope you're inspired enough about this to say, this is social change. Everyone get on board, share this, tell your friends, get the information out there, and go visit the other resources that are at on my YouTube channel at the hashtag Family Talk. And what's even more important to me at this point now is to please, just 3 minutes to fill in the survey. We need to know that all the time and effort that goes into bringing this content to you makes a difference. So it's 3 minutes. There's a $5 Timmy's card for the first 100 people to complete the survey. And anybody, thank you, who's posted a question or who shares their timeline, any of those interactions gets your name put into a draw for a $250 Visa gift card. And from my bottom of my heart, this is an important program to me, and I really, really thank you for your support, and I hope it's making a difference. So thanks for coming in tonight. Enjoy the rest of your evening.